Heihachi would always refuse to acknowledge this aspect of Lee, as he only saw him as a means to an end.
リー、一日集会じゃないんだ。債務報告書を取りに来たんだ。早く持ってきて。
As Lee matured, he spent significant time in America, particularly in San Francisco, where he crossed paths with fighters like Martial Law and Paul Phoenix.
It was nice to meet you, Lee. I enjoyed training with you. You're a great fighter. Maybe we'll meet again as competitors. I'll look forward to that.
Excellent.
During this period in his life, Lee earned the moniker Silver-Haired Demon, his reputation as a formidable fighter spreading through underground circuits. Known for his slickness in battle, like Kazuya, Lee was now a reflection of the harsh upbringing he had endured under Heihachi. The rivalry between Kazuya and Lee intensified further whenever Lee would return from America. Kazuya viewed Lee's successes as a direct challenge to his position in the family, a threat he found deeply offensive. Lee, with his desperate need to prove himself, could never truly grasp the darkness that consumed Kazuya, the devil gene that lurked beneath the surface, whispering promises of power he was more than willing to accept. His hatred for Heihachi deepened with every passing year, and Lee's presence served as a constant reminder of his father's manipulations. Kazuya grew increasingly more cruel. He slowly started to overlook the challenges laid out by his so-called brother. He knew that his true test would eventually come, a final battle with his father. That single thought would all but consume him. It became the only thing on his mind. And if Lee stood in his way, Kazuya would crush him too, without a second thought. As the years passed, Kazuya realized he could no longer remain confined within the walls of the Mishima estate. The intensity of Heihachi's training had shaped him into a dangerous fighter. But it was not enough. He craved more, a true test of strength to push past his limits. He needed to face new opponents, to prove his superiority not just within the estate, but on a global stage. Leaving the Mishima estate behind, Kazuya embarked on a journey across the globe. He entered martial arts tournaments in various countries, competing in both official contests and underground fights. The thrill of combat, the clash of fists, and the raw intensity of battle fueled his drive. Every opponent he faced was another step on his path to ultimate power. He traveled through countries in Asia, Africa, Europe, and countless more locations around the world. His battles were varied, his opponents were tough, but Kazuya showed no mercy. Each fight increased his skills, and each victory added to his growing reputation as an unstoppable force. During these travels, he would eventually arrive in America, where he crossed paths with Paul Phoenix. Paul was a martial artist renowned for his brash demeanor and strong fighting spirit. Their clash unfolded in a crowded underground arena in San Francisco.
Let's go! Moose!
The air thick with tension as spectators gathered to witness the spectacle. Paul had heard of Kazuya's fearsome reputation, not that he would ever outwardly show it, but Kazuya could also sense Paul's strength. He knew Paul was not an opponent to be taken lightly.
Kazuya Mishima versus Paul Phoenix.
Fight!
The fight was fierce. The two fighters pushed each other to their limits as they exchanged blows. For the first time in a long while, Kazuya found himself evenly matched. In the end, neither could claim victory. The fight ended in a draw. Both men stood, exhausted but unbroken. It was a rare outcome for Kazuya, an opponent who could stand against him, who could match his strength. Paul smiled and extended his hand to Kazuya in a gesture of good sportsmanship, acknowledging the close fight. Kazuya, however, did not smile. He refused the handshake in contempt. Frustration and anger overcame him. He was furious at the realization that if he couldn't even defeat Paul, then in his eyes, he was still far from strong enough to defeat Heihachi. This frustration only fueled his burning desire for more power. Choosing to simply ignore this setback, Kazuya continued his journey, his reputation growing with each battle. After many competitions, however, a sense of emptiness lingered, a feeling that none of these victories truly mattered. Not until he faced the one opponent he truly longed to defeat. While training in his secluded dojo in America, Kazuya received news that made his heart pound with anticipation. The King of Iron Fist tournament, a global martial arts competition hosted by none other than Heihachi Mishima. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for, to compete against the world's greatest fighters, and most importantly, to confront his father on the grandest stage and settle the score once and for all. After years of relentless training and fighting, Kazuya knew he was ready. The focus, the battles across the globe, the dormant power of the devil gene, all of it had brought him to this moment. He would defeat Heihachi, seize control of the Mishima Zaibatsu, and carve out his own destiny. As he made his way to the tournament, his mind was clear. No doubts, no hesitation. This was his moment to claim everything, to wield the power he had earned, and to ensure that no one, especially his father, could ever take anything from him again. Revenge, power, control. This time, Kazuya would not fall. He would rise, and the world would witness the strength of a true Mishima.
Welcome to the King of Iron Fist tournament.
Fighters from around the globe gathered for the event, each with their own reasons for stepping into the ring. For some, it was glory. For others, redemption. Kazuya entered the tournament with cold determination, his eyes locked on a single target. He planned to advance through the early rounds with ruthless efficiency, his skill and power undeniable to all who witness him. He cared nothing for the spectacle or the audience. His focus was singular, his purpose unwavering. For his first fight, the tournament pitted him against his adoptive brother, Li Chaolan, who had entered the competition in a bid to defeat Kazuya and claim the role of heir to the Mishima Zaibatsu for himself. Their rivalry, which had simmered for years, was now set to explode in the arena. As Li stepped into the arena, the tension between the two was palpable. Kazuya's gaze fixed on his adoptive brother, his eyes emotionless. Gleeful cruelty crept into his thoughts as he envisioned breaking Li once and for all.
自信があるようだね、リ。自分が兵馬の組に過ぎないとでも思っていたのか。兵馬はお前を私のおもちゃとして私を前進させるライバルとして採用したんだ。あなたは私を超える存在ではなかった。お前は誰にとっても何の意味もない。必要ならやってみるがいい。でもあなたの激場所は常に私より下であることを知っておいてほしい。
Lee's confident smirk faltered for a moment, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. Despite his bravado, Kazuya's words cut deeply. Once a grieving, lonely child surviving on the streets before Heihachi found him, Lee had always known the truth. He was adopted to be Kazuya's rival, a pawn in Heihachi's twisted game. By choosing to ignore it all, Lee had secretly hoped for more, hoped that somehow he could carve out a place in the Mishima family beyond being a mere tool. No one had ever paid him attention other than Heihachi, and though that attention was cold and calculated, Lee had accepted it, clinging to whatever scraps he could get. Lee straightened, masking his hurt with his usual arrogance. He smiled, a smug, exaggerated grin that concealed the sadness within.
ジュンさん、あなたはいつもイを腰を評価していた。私はあなたのライバルになるために採用されたのではない。兵馬が私の中に何かを見出したから採用されたのだ。明らかにあなたをこなかす何かをね。そして今日、それが何なのかはっきりとお見せしましょう。それに少しは謙虚さが必要だろう。これが私からの贈り物だと思ってくれ。親愛なる兄弟よ。Come on!
Kazuya Mishima versus Lee Chaolan.
Kazuya Mishima wins!
Lee moved with an elegance only he could muster, each attack delivered with a flourish, as though he were performing rather than fighting. While giving it everything he had, Lee's usual cheerfulness was replaced by a profound sense of urgency. He was desperate to prove himself. Kazuya, however, was relentless. He had no empathy for Lee's struggle. He only saw through him, beyond him, to Heihachi. The fight ended with Kazuya standing victorious over his fallen brother. Lee lay on the ground, bruised and battered, his eyes reflecting a mixture of pain, resignation, and deep sadness. Beneath his bravado and his best efforts, he had failed. He had given everything he had, but in the end, he was still just a pawn. A truth that cut deeper than any blow Kazuya had delivered.
どんなに頑張っても三島にはなれない。
Lee closed his eyes, a bitter smile tugging at his lips. He had fought to prove his worth, but once again he was left in Kazuya's shadow, forced to confront the harsh truth of his relationship with his brother and his adoptive father. Moving forward, Lee would have to move on and carve out his own identity. The tournament was a melting pot of styles and strengths, truly testing Paul's abilities and resolve. One of Paul's most memorable battles in the tournament was against an opponent unlike any other, Kuma, a giant bear with formidable strength and surprising agility.
A bear? Seriously?
The fight was not just a physical battle, but a mental one, as Paul had to adapt his fighting style to an opponent so unorthodox. Viewers at home were in awe as man and beast clashed.
Well, I've never fought a bear before. I guess there's a first time for everything.
Paul Phoenix versus Kuma.
Final round. Fight.
Emerging victorious against Kuma, Paul's legend grew, and so did his confidence. Throughout the tournament, Paul's anticipation to face Kazuya grew. Each victory brought him closer to the showdown he had been dreaming of. However, fate had other plans. Nina's reputation began to precede her. Tales of her contracts reached the ears of those in the darker corners of the world. Now possessing a lethal edge, she was an asset, a weapon to be hired, and a tool for the ambitions of others. Nina's cold, indifferent persona began to solidify. She learned to mask her emotions, to bury any semblance of vulnerability under a veneer of ice. Her interactions were transactional, her relationships superficial. The only constant in her life was her rivalry with Anna, a flame that refused to be extinguished. Nina's first major contract came as no surprise. It was a validation of her skills. The target was none other than Heihachi Mishima, a name that reverberated in the underworld. He was the owner of the Mishima Zaibatsu, an enormous business conglomerate with interests in many areas, the same group that sponsored and hosted the King of Iron Fist tournament. She surmised her hiring was likely a typical power struggle between corporations, something she had seen many times before. She chose to never get involved personally in her contracts. Her only focus was the mission and the lucrative financial reward that tied it all together.
Welcome to the King of Iron Fist tournament.
As the King of Iron Fist tournament commenced, Nina entered the fray. Her objective was clear: assassinate Heihachi Mishima. The tournament was a convergence of the world's greatest fighters, the perfect cover for her assignment. She deduced that the only way to gain access to the highly guarded Heihachi would be to advance to the finals, where he would be her opponent, the perfect moment to strike. Beyond the contract, unbeknownst to her, the tournament was set to be the stage for personal vendettas and unresolved conflicts. Nina's first significant battle was more than a simple contest. It was a continuation of a lifelong feud. Her opponent was none other than her sister, Anna Williams. Their fight would become a spectacle of years of bitterness and rivalry.
What are you doing here, Anna? Getting in my way.
I'm here to show you who really belongs in the spotlight, Nina.
You never could accept that I was better.
Better at following orders, maybe, you lapdog. I chose my path.
A path in my shadow, as always. You never understood the gravity of our legacy, Anna.
I understand just fine. I'm more than just a killer, unlike you.
And yet here we are. You're no different.
Nina Williams versus Anna Williams.
Final round. Fight. Nina Williams wins.
The fight was a blend of elegant martial arts, a dance they had rehearsed since childhood. The sisters knew each other's moves intimately, but in the end, Nina emerged victorious. Her skill and focus outmatched Anna's fiery temperament.
This was inevitable, Anna. You always fall short.
Why do you always have to be so heartless, Nina?
Heartlessness is a necessity in our line of work. You should know that better than anyone.
Ah! This isn't over, Nina. It will never be over between us.
It's over when I say it's over. Keep trying. Maybe one day you'll understand.
Welcome to the King of Iron Fist tournament.
As the King of Iron Fist tournament progressed, King found himself face to face with a familiar adversary, Armor King. The air was thick with tension as they faced off. The scars of their previous encounter were still fresh, Armor King entered the arena with a mix of resentment and determination, while King, aware of the weight of their history, approached the match with a blend of regret and resolve. Despite the bitterness of his previous defeat, Armor King couldn't help but admire King's skill. He could sense he fought for a noble cause. As they began to clash, King knew that their rivalry had been born from his mistake, and he desperately wanted to make things right, silently hoping that this fight could be a turning point in their feud.
King versus Armor King.
The match was a spectacle of raw power and technical prowess, each move charged with their shared history. In the end, King emerged victorious. But this victory was different. It wasn't about defeating a rival. It was about transcending past animosities. In the wake of their battle, a new bond began to form. The revelation of King's true purpose for entering the tournament, to raise funds for his orphanage, struck a chord with Armor King. He saw in King a kindred spirit, someone who fought for a cause greater than himself. In the weeks that followed, the two began training together for King's next fights in the tournament, their rivalry transforming into friendship. They pushed each other to new heights, and their mutual respect grew with each session. Armor King opened up to King, sharing stories of his own journey as a luchador and the close bond he shared with his brother. Through their interactions, both fighters discovered that they had more in common than they initially thought.